May God have mercy on my soul.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's March now, so I'm in the middle of the March Mystery Madness. I've got a few days left, and I'm on the third book out of the 4 that I chose for that challenge. So we'll see how I get on. But those reviews will probably be, the last 2 reviews will probably be coming in April, I expect. I've got a bunch of other videos scheduled for the end of the month anyway. But in the meantime, this new challenge has come up, created by the Bookish Bryants, and there's lots of other people that are hosting it. And it's the Horror Mayhem. So in May, the idea is that you read 4 stories based on the 4 prompts created by the Bookish Bryants for Horror Mayhem. So I'll tell you what the 4 prompts are, and then I'll tell you about what I'm going to do, and then I'll also tell you about some bonus stories I'm going to try and read if I've got time. So the first challenge is to read a supernatural book, or a supernatural story. The idea is they're supposed to be relatively short, so they could be genuinely short stories, or they could be just short novels. So I think everything I've chosen bar 1 is very short, and the other one is quite short. Yeah, it's only just above the thingy. So the limit. So supernatural stories is your first prompt, and your second prompt is to pick a Gothic horror story. A Gothic horror story. And the third prompt is to pick a good example of a cosmic horror story, or just an example of cosmic horror story. And the fourth prompt is to pick a folklore horror story. So 4 really cool prompts that really cover quite a wide range of horror. And what I've done as well with my choices is I've picked something deliberately humorous, something very serious and gory, something probably quite mysterious, and something classic. So there's quite a variety of stories here. So for the supernatural story, I have picked Gill's All Fright Diner. Gill's All Fright Diner by A. Lee Martinez. So this looks like a lot of fun. It's a comedy horror book based around what looks like a zombie attack that's being fended off by a werewolf and a vampire, being hired by somebody who owns a diner, who is possibly having this attack being feasted on him by somebody who wants him to clear out of town. That's what I'm getting from the back. But it does look like a lot of fun, and it's quite short. So this is my contribution for the supernatural horror prompt. The second prompt is a Gothic horror story, and this is very short, but it's quite famous. This is what Hellraiser is based on, and that's Clive Barker's book, The Hellbound Heart. So I'm going to be reading The Hellbound Heart. It's about 130 pages, so very short book. Clive Barker, Hellbound Heart. So I'll be reading that for the Gothic horror choice. Then for cosmic horror, for the third option, I'm picking a classic. And I'm reading again. I have read this before. It's one of my favourite stories, but I'm reading it again in preparation for me choosing the 10 favourite short stories that I love. And so it's a bit of a spoiler for that top 10, because I'm sure it'll stay in there. But this is Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. So Who Goes There was the story that produced both versions of The Thing. So The Thing from Another World and John Carpenter's The Thing, based on a story called Who Goes There. So I'll be reading that again. Looking forward to reading that again. That's my choice for cosmic horror. And then my choice for folklore horror, which looks like a really interesting book. I'm really glad I found it because I heard a lot about it. And that's The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. So this should be really cool. Again, it's not really long, so it's just above the limit, but I think it's short enough to qualify in a general sense. So The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. That's my choice for the folklore horror. So those 4 stories I'm definitely going to be reading. One's a short story, the other 3 are relatively short novels. But if I have time, I hope to get to the 3rd book of the Dresden Files. So that's clearly a supernatural ghost story. I'd like to get to that. I nearly chose this one for the folklore story, so I would like to use this challenge as an excuse to read The Slaughterman by Cassandra Parkin. I really want to read this because I have read another book by her, which is called The Summer We All Ran Away, and it's one of my favourite books. I absolutely loved it. I will probably do a review about that at some point. But The Slaughterman seems to be very creepy forest stuff happening. I mean, it's very vague what it says on the back, but I've got a lot of faith in her as a writer, and it sounds really cool. So I'd like to try this out. So The Slaughterman, if you've read this, you can tell me what you think of it, but I'm deliberately keeping it quite vague in my head before I start it because I like to have surprises. I'd like to get to that. And I would like, if I can, I've kind of been putting this off, I'd like to get to Consumed by David Cronenberg. So this didn't really neatly fit into the 4 categories because it seems to be about cannibalism. But it's David Cronenberg. I'm sure it's horrific and I'm sure it's worth reading. So I'm a big fan of David Cronenberg. So I really hope this is good. If you've read Consumed, tell me what you think of it. I'd like to get to that at some point as well. And what I'd like to do, as much of the time as I can during that month, is read some Brothers Grimm stories. So I had just recently found this really lovely illustrated version of the Brothers Grimm stories, and I'd like to read through them and pick out some of my favourites. So that's another thing I'd like to do in May. So that's my contribution to Horror Mayhem. Tell me what you think of those choices. See you later. Bye.
Picture of what it's like to be you. Sit up on your high chair.